Welcome to thewealthchannel.com. My name is Adam Batchelor. I am joined once again, lucky to be joined, by Phil Cubeta, MSFS CLU, CHFC and CAP, the Sallie B and William B. Wallace Chair in Philanthropy here at the college.
Thank you. Again, Thank you.
Phil, we talked in our last segment about some of the 30,000-foot view of philanthropy and nonprofits, and now I want to talk about practicality and how someone who is in the position of an advisor or an agent can use these tools to serve their clients and serve the greater good, which I know is sort of your life's work. So I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on this. Just start off, if you will, by talking about how someone might get into the business of philanthropy planning if they're already an agent or an advisor, maybe doing some estate planning work. How can they make that a bigger part of their practice?
Well, I think if we had a chance to kind of talk about it with an advisor, I think the first thing you try to get at is whether they see philanthropy as a tool or technique of something else. In other words, normally when you first meet an advisor, you need to talk about how they get involved in philanthropy. Their vision of it is they do investment planning, or they do insurance planning, or do estate planning, do financial planning, and they think or feel like philanthropy is a tool or technique thereof. So you get a list of all the estate planning tools, it's maybe 30, and one of them is a CRT, and one of them is a CLT, and one of them is a CRAT and a CRUT, and you get all these different acronyms, and you kind of think of it in that tax framework. If you look at it from that perspective, my experience has been you will end up saying in about 3 to 5 years, this stuff really doesn't work. I've tried it, I keep recommending it, nobody ever does it, okay? You'll reproduce this result from thousands of people who've done it that way in the past. It's a little bit as if you were trying to sell life insurance, and it never occurred to you as people buy it because they love somebody, and you assumed all the tax deferral and tax this and tax that. How much insurance would you sell if you tried to sell to people who didn't love anybody but themselves? I mean, occasionally you would luck out, but you would be wasting a lot of time, right?
Sure.
The qualifying question in life insurance sales is, who do you love, basically? Who do you love other than yourself who's going to miss you when you're gone, and life insurance is going to step in and fill that void, right? The same is true of philanthropy. Philanthropy is a motive, okay, more so than a tool or technique. Philanthropy comes from the word love of your fellow man. Charity comes from caritas, another word for love. These are like big hints. So I think you're better off starting by thinking that you are really in the business of bringing money together with the things people love and the people love to do good things during life and at death. And if you approach in that spirit of what do you love, you start with that kind of a question, you'll discover philanthropy falls into place very, very naturally. Because if I were to say to somebody, particularly as they get older, you say to somebody, you love your family, you love your business, you've taken excellent care of your money, judging from the planning you've done. Are there any other things you love beyond what I've mentioned? Any other thing or place that you love or care about you'd like to have a positive impact on other than what I've mentioned? I don't think I've ever asked that question of a grown-up, somebody who's past the bravado phase of life, the tough guy phase. I don't think I've ever asked a question like that and not gotten this kind of double take, triple take, quadruple take. And then they own up, yes, I love my country. I love my school. I love my church or synagogue. I love all these organizations that have done something for me. Once you get to that motive and you start talking about how can we take care of your family and also your business and also your money and also these other things you were mentioning, then if you're having that conversation, you find philanthropy falls in place very, very quickly. Although they might not call it philanthropy, they might call it giving, they might call it social impact, they might call it what I can do with the rest of my life once I retire. I mean, it comes by lots of names, but you'll find that philanthropy falls into place very quickly.
And it's hard not to want to do that. So I think you've convinced a lot of people out there that this is something important.
It's also a lot more fun, honestly.
Sure. How, though, if I'm an advisor or an agent, and I have maintained very professional relationships, but very interdependent relationships with my clients, how do we get to these values-based conversations? You sort of mentioned some conversation starters, but if you can give us some more examples of how to get there.
I think it's probably the toughest thing. I think this is the toughest thing for most advisors, and it always has surprised me because the advisors I've worked with and trained, I'd have to say, in terms of their basic aptitude on technical, they really were not built, so to speak, from birth on to be a technician. I mean, they've learned to be technicians, but they're really people. They are people who enjoy being outside, shaking hands, being with other human beings. So it's always surprised me. The part that baffles them is the people side. It's got to be the way we're training each other. It has to be. I think the tricky thing about having a good discovery agreement around this is it's not predictable. I think we're all trained. Trainers are trained never to ask a question we don't know the answer. Advisors are taught to sell from a deck, and the next to last slide is the close, and the last slide is the answers to objections, right? Because you're always going to get the same objections.
Sure.
This is a conversation where you don't know where it's going to go, and that scares people. But my sense is it can only go somewhere good if you ask the right question and listen to the answer and ask your next question based not on the next question on your form, but then based on what the person just told you. They will tell you what it takes to sell them. They will tell you almost point blank what it's going to take to sell them if you just let the story run. They will tell a story about their life, and it will pause and hesitate and almost demand a continuation. And that continuation is the next chapter of their financial plan.
Phil, beyond the obvious, beyond a person's assets and beyond their tax obligations, who is or is there an ideal candidate or an ideal client to be talking to about philanthropy planning?
I'd say, the first is, do they love something other than their family, okay? And you don't know that unless you look and listen, and most people do. That's the first thing. The second thing is, do they have enough to take care of themselves and their family? When you start running the financial calculations and you put the cash flow and the net worth together, and you're going to watch a line. That line is going to be the cash flow going this way, right? And you've got your net worth kind of above it. If that net worth is headed for the moon, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can do 4% growth rate, 3% growth rate, 2% growth rate, and it's still going to the moon. That kind of a person is going to be giving something to somebody sometime. It's going to be their kids, it's going to be the government, it's going to be charity. And another really, really good, simple, fact-finding question. Don't stack the deck. Just ask the person. Here's what you're worth today. Here's what you're going to be worth tomorrow based on our calculations. Here's what you're going to be worth the life expectancy. There's only 3 places that money can go. Taxes, charity, children. So let's say we're talking about today 10 million growing to 20, growing to 30. How much of that ideally would you want to go into each of those 3 buckets? And just listen to what they say.